As you gather and hear me today, I will be in Cancun with many other Canadians from our organization and others to really support the global climate justice movement, to support the need to protect the earth, and to criticize very deeply our government's position as it goes into this summit, as we did when our government went into Copenhagen. And you may remember our government was the only one that predicted Copenhagen would be a total failure, which I guess they were right, but they actually wanted it to be a failure. Canada is also the only country in the world that ratified Kyoto and has since backed out, and it's of course because we have no intention of obeying or being part of any global solution here, particularly with the expansion of the tar sands, and now the latest is this energy exploration off the coastal waters and so on. So we really have a huge job as Canadians. Our country has let the world down. We have taken a very bad position. So it is very important for us to be present in Cancun, to say these things and to be part of a global solidarity against governments like Canada, against large corporations who will not be part of the solution. But it's also very important to be on the ground. Local solutions matter, local activism matters, getting to your friends and family and community, getting to your local municipal councillors, right up to your members of parliament. Every level of government matters. So I send you greetings, I send you love, I send you strength, I send you solidarity, and together we'll make a difference. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
IEN's political platform going into Cancun is based on 4 primary principles, with the first being leave the fossil fuels in the ground. Secondly, demanding real and effective solutions and opposing false solutions like the World Bank Reducing Environmental Degradation and Deforestation Program, which is only a privatization scheme aimed at privatizing forests in the global south and affecting the lives of over 60 million indigenous peoples who depend on these forests for their livelihood and to maintain their connection to the sacredness of Mother Earth. If this program and other false solutions within the global climate carbon market come to pass under false plans that have been put forward through the Copenhagen Accord by President Obama, we will see so much of the commons be commodified, to be bought and sold as commodities, to allow business as usual in industrialized nations. The third point that we have going into Cancun is that developed countries must take responsibility. And I've already talked about this, but that leads us to our fourth and most critical piece of our 4-tiered platform coming into Cancun, and that is living in a good way with Mother Earth. President Morales of the Bolivian government has put forward a challenge to the world by organizing the Cochabamba's People's Conference on Climate Change last year. The official negotiating text being discussed here in Cancun is between the Copenhagen Accord and the false solutions that it represents, and the Cochabamba People's Declaration on Climate, and the over 35,000 grassroots people's voices that that declaration represents. And so, in a good way, the Indigenous Environmental Network and all of our allies ask you to join us in the fight for climate justice, to make the moral decision to start living life in a good way rather than just in a better way.
When we think of climate change, we often think of numbers, targets, parts per million, or images of polar bears. But really, it's about so much more than that. Real people and real communities are being impacted by climate change every single day. Not only are downstream communities and indigenous communities, the people of northern Alberta, being impacted by the tar sands, as well as of course the entire ecosystems there, but also people in Sarnia next to processing plants of tar sands oil, or people in northern BC where they're planning on building another pipeline, or another pipeline that's possibly going to be built all the way down to Montreal. This is why the Canadian Youth Climate Coalition has created a Canadian youth delegation to go to the UN Climate Conference in Cancun this year. I, along with the rest of the youth delegation, will be there to bring the messages that happen at the conference, for the decisions that our governments make or don't make, along with the messages from frontline communities and other activists that are going to be there, back to communities here in Canada. Not only that, but we're there to be a living proof that the Canadian government and what they're calling for does not represent Canadian communities. We're there to show that action needs to be taken and we need to create climate justice. But we can't only do this from Cancun. We need to change things here in Canada as well. And that means we need to have thousands of Cancuns. So this is why we have these assemblies for climate justice. We need to talk about what climate justice means, what it means in Canada, what it means across the world. And that means just transitions for the people who work in these industries. That means free and prior informed consent for Indigenous communities before any extraction happens on their lands. We need to talk about this and we need to take action. That's why we're calling on you at CYCC to become a part of the movement for climate justice.
Today, Kairos and other Canadian religious organizations will be in Cancun fighting against the climate injustices that have been committed around the world and that continue today. We see climate justice as being one of the classic global justice issues because the atmosphere, after all, is the classic commons that we all share. But the fact of the matter is that over the past 200 years, certain societies have been the plunderers of the Earth's resources and the polluters of the Earth's atmosphere, emitting a disproportionate share of the carbon emissions and plundering a disproportionate share of natural resources. And what that leads to is that the northern countries like Canada, have actually accrued a debt to those of the south because we have taken more than our fair share of the atmosphere's carbon carrying capacity. Now is our time as Canadians to change that trend, but not only to stop being disproportionate polluters and to stop the plundering that occurs in developing countries, but also to repay a debt. That repayment has to start by assisting developing countries in adapting to climate change and developing economic development paths that will be low carbon paths. We can do that, and it's incumbent upon us as Canadians to force our government to take these positions to Cancun. Now, by gathering in the people's assemblies as you have today, you're doing more than just holding our government to account on these issues. It's an opportunity also to right these injustices locally, building from the grassroots, from the bottom up, and that's where the climate solutions are really going to come from. Our partners in the developing world are already building them in their own communities, in their own countries, and they're encouraged when they see that Canadians are taking action themselves and that the voice of our leaders and the positions of our government does not represent where Canadians sit on this issue.
Hi everyone, hello from Cancun. That's where I'm going to be by the time that you're meeting in your community for People's Assembly on Climate Justice. Just want to say I'm really happy you've come out tonight to talk about climate justice. This is the issue of our times, and I'm really hoping that tonight or today you'll have the opportunity to really delve into what is climate justice and have a dialogue about that and really start thinking and talking about what it means to start addressing the root causes of the climate crisis. Yes, we need to reduce emissions. That's absolutely essential, but we need to do that from the framework of understanding what are the root causes of climate crisis. How is this related to the levels of consumerism and consumption that we have, our modes of production and inequitable global trade and the sort of economic system that's driving the impacts we're seeing in terms of the climate crisis. I'm really hoping you'll be able to delve into some of that and help that influence discussion on both real and false solutions to the climate crisis. Real solutions that can involve local actions for climate justice. Things like challenging a local polluter. We clearly have a responsibility in advancing climate justice to reduce our emissions rapidly here in Canada. Positive solutions like the Transition Town initiative and starting up a transition town or supporting local sustainable agriculture are calling on your municipality to have public and community ownership of green power, which is an obvious solution to the climate crisis. We're going to be joining and mobilizing as part of a global movement for climate justice in Cancun, but really the connection to what's happening locally, and in particular in the context of Canada, where we have a federal government that just is seemingly unwilling to move on taking climate action. really the local level is where we need to look to start mobilizing and moving things forward in a positive way. So I'm really excited that these assemblies are happening across Canada. I'm really excited to hear the report backs and look forward to working hopefully with some of you in the years to come.